So game week 1 is finally over. It was a tough one for me. I hope you did much better, but this video is all about the reaction and some of the most important talking points from that first game week. So let's get straight into it. So starting with Manchester City then, and Reijnders has repaid the faith of those managers that went with him over Probably Elliot Anderson was your main rival. I went the Elliot Anderson route and decided to bench him. But those of you who did go for the Elliot Anderson route, it wasn't a huge swing. There was 10 points for Reijnders, but you got 6 points there with Elliot Anderson. So it was a decent return, and he has now even risen in price to 5.6 million as we speak, and also gone up to a quarter of the FPL database owning him. Good little debut for him, but then also on the flip side, you've got people like me who also went Marmoush, and we were severely punished. I think those who went for him, like myself, realised the risk we were taking in going for him. To be honest, I thought that risk would be paid off, at least with the start, but then when you see that starting lineup and Pep Roulette back in full effect, Oscar Bob starting in this occasion as well, it just puts huge doubts on what we want to do with him going forward. You go into that Spurs game next week, and is he going to start? At the moment, I'm feeling like he's not going to. I feel it's going to be a repeat lineup from Pep. So there's two opposite ends of the spectrum then in this one, and Marmoush unfortunately came on as well, played the 24 minutes and didn't get a return at all. But then you're going into, obviously, the next 6 fixtures for Manchester City, with Tottenham away, Tottenham at home, Brighton away, Manchester United at home, Arsenal away after that. So you've got 4 fixtures which I think City will consider they're all winnable, and there's no reason that they can't go on to do that. But they're not absolutely essential to start rushing in to get Reijnders. I totally understand if you have done that or you want to get him straight in your teams, and the same with taking somebody like Marmoush out of your team. I can completely understand the rush to do that. For myself, as a Marmoush owner, I think I am going to be rolling the transfer this week. It's so easy, and I think it's going to be the common theme throughout this video. It's so easy just to knee-jerk and just jump and panic and, right, need to get rid of him. I'm much more on the boat of keeping that transfer and then having 2 transfers going into game week 3, and we can make a much more informed decision. Anything can happen over 1 game week, where with those 2 transfers, it gives you so much more flexibility, and you'll get all that information from game week 2, and we can see how they do against the Spurs that did well themselves on the opening day. Manchester City as a whole as well, we're looking really promising, as you had the clean sheet points as well. Those people who went Ryan Aït-Nouri as well got a nice little 3 bonus points there as well. And the clean sheet, very, very effective there. And those people who went Haaland or over Salah, or Haaland and Salah, it was a good week for you, I certainly imagine. Certainly if you managed to squeeze both into your teams, because that is where the majority of these game weeks points came from. And if you want to jump off one of them eventually, you're in a good position to. It's easier to certainly downgrade if you want to take maybe Salah out in the upcoming weeks with some difficult fixtures coming. I wouldn't recommend it. But you do have that much more flexibility than us that would need to try and find a way to get Haaland in. So those of you who went for those few Manchester City assets apart from Marmoush, it's a good well done and a good start for Manchester City. Let's move on to Liverpool. So Liverpool played Bournemouth, and this was a game I was actually at, and it was probably the most entertaining game, not being biased there, but the most entertaining game of the weekend. Although there wasn't always that many games to choose from, with a lot of 0-0s and a lot of defences coming out on top. But let's start with Florian Wirtz in this instance. 31.2% owners I make this video. He's had a few transfers out, and he didn't repay the faith or the riskiness that people wanted to take on him, the risks. Although, when you look at his stats, he did get a better expected goal involvement than Reijnders himself. But obviously, Wirtz plays in a little bit more advanced position than Reijnders. 81 minutes, he did look, to me, a little bit flaky on the ball. Was muscled off a little bit, but there's some bright moments, and there'll be better days to come for Wirtz. And as we talk about it, obviously, from a fantasy league aspect, again, like Marmoush, and probably you're in a better position because you know Florian Wirtz is going to get the minutes, but don't rush to sell him. Again, just get more information. They've got Newcastle up next, which is a tough fixture. But choosing assets like this, I think you should have known what you were getting yourselves into. You had this Bournemouth game to start with, but then you're going into 2 tough games with Newcastle away and Arsenal after. Arsenal at home. So I think you should have known what you were getting yourself in for. You should have been prepared for this. So let's not knee-jerk. Let's not react to a blank from Florian Wirtz. Rash, too rash. Obviously, we had Hugo Ekitike, who looked really good, to be honest. He held the ball up really well. He looked really strong. And his touches were just as good as they were through most of that Community Shield game as well. He's looking the real deal. He only played 71 minutes, but in that he managed a goal and an assist and repaid the faith of the people who went with him, and he's also gone up 0.1 in price already. Would I rush to get him in now? No, again, save your transfers, but I can understand how tempting it is, but we're going back to those fixtures again. Maybe in a couple of weeks. You see they've got Burnley away, Everton at home, Crystal Palace away. Maybe you can look to him then. And you also want to get all the information of what's happening with Alexander Isak. Because if Liverpool do manage to get that over the line in the next week or two, Hugo Ekitike's minutes become a huge issue for you. So again, let's get some more information. Will that transfer window's open as well? It's going to cause, it can cause a lot of problems. Certainly in the front line of Liverpool, who are probably still needing to get some sort of attacker in anyway, whether it's backup for Ekitike or Isak. So let's not go for him just yet, I don't think. Let's move on to the rest of the games. So let's take a look at some of the bigger talking points that I've selected out from this game week. Starting with Chelsea, Crystal Palace, one of the many 0-0s that happened over the weekend. Now, blanks for Pedro, blanks for Palmer. The defences for both Crystal Palace and Chelsea did come out on top in that game. Again, I don't think we need to be rushing out to be jumping off João Pedro or Palmer just yet. We bought these players in for the incredible opening fixtures Chelsea have, not just attacking wise but defensively. I own Cucurella. He did have 9 points, but I believe overnight while the finalisation of the game week, he's been robbed one of those bonus points and he's been moved down to 2. So he ended up with 8. But yeah, like I'm saying, these fixtures for Chelsea coming up are very promising, and that's the reason we've got these players in. There's a lot of people jumping off João Pedro, and I don't think it's the time to be doing that just yet. We knew going into it he was going to get subbed, probably for Delap, which he did get subbed in the end. And we were adamant, I think everybody that went for him were adamant that 70 minutes would have been enough in most games for him to get a goal. So, stick with them for now. And certainly if you chose the Chelsea defenders or Sanchez in goal, I think that reinforced your choice there. And then even looking at the Crystal Palace defence as well. Once again, I benched Richards. I got 18 points on my bench total. I got 6, 6 and 6 for all my outfield players. Joe Rodon also. Jose Sarr with the no points on my bench on top of that. But the Crystal Palace defence and Richards, I think they can be pretty solid this year, especially going to Chelsea and getting a clean sheet. Remains to be seen what's happening with Mark Gahey. And on top of that, also somebody I mentioned in previous videos, now I feel like people might start jumping on Munoz. Apart from the fixture in game week 3, they've got a good run of fixtures coming up. And maybe now Munoz's attacking threat will shine through, along with those clean sheets and even some defensive contribution points as well. I think it was only Lacroix that got him for Crystal Palace. Richards and Munoz just falling short, and Gahey a little bit more behind, I think, with 6 defensive contributions in that game. So, yeah, we might have to wait and see as well what happens with Gahey. He looked a little bit unhappy with the manager going off at the end of that game, so it's still putting his future in doubt, although it could still be next summer that he decides to move on that free transfer. Next up, we got the Manchester United-Arsenal game. Arsenal winning this 1-0. It was a disappointing game for both attacks, really. The only goal coming from Calafiori. So those of you that went for Gyökeres, he only got 59 minutes and 0 expected goals. He didn't have a shot at all. It was not the greatest start to his Arsenal career, but they've got Leeds next, and that's what surely people that put him in their teams would have been targeting. He could be, if you haven't got somebody like a Saka, he could be a great option for a punt on captaincy for the upcoming game. Also, Manchester United didn't look too bad themselves. They attacked pretty well. I think the acid test is going to be when they play some of the teams they're expected to beat. Manchester United typically play better against the better teams anyway. So these teams that they have coming up where they should be winning, that's going to be a real test. And then we can probably see what the likes of Mbeumo, Fernandes, he's consistent usually for them anyway, and Cunha. So certainly seeing what those 2 attackers can do, and probably they'll be bringing Šeško in to start alongside them as well. The Arsenal defence on top of this, they got their clean sheet and looked as solid as always. A bit rash, but it's always going to be a difficult opening day at Old Trafford, with the expectation that Manchester United put on their players and the support that they give them. Next up, we've got the Nottingham Forest game. Chris, the inevitable Wood, back. I think it's going to be a tough season for Brentford. So certainly those of you that went Kelleher, it's sort of the reason I went against them. There's one thing I did get right this week anyway, but I don't like the Brentford defence because of it. Their attack may struggle. You've got the likes of Thiago got the penalty, so that was a positive. He is on penalties. He did score. So he might be able to chip in with a few goals, and he might be a good £6 million enabling striker for you. But yeah, certainly the Kelleher owners, I don't know if I can see too many Brentford clean sheets coming, but it's one game week. Again, let's get some more information first. But surprisingly, going against pre-season, the Nottingham Forest attack was really good, and Chris Wood was back with a bang, proving that he's not just that one-season wonder. He's been a consistent striker in the Premier League for many years, but usually averaging about 10 goals a season. That 20 goal of the season is starting to not look like a freak, and it looking like he could do it again. It was sharp. So that Nottingham Forest attack certainly underestimated by their pre-season form. Nottingham Forest defenders are a little bit unlucky, aren't you, there, not to get any clean sheets points from them due to a penalty being given. Moving on to Spurs Burnley, and Spurs, yeah, they've come flying out the traps, haven't they? I was talking down Kudus leading into the season. I did worry about Spurs, and obviously going off Kudus's previous form in the previous season for West Ham, it wasn't great, but 2 assists. So those of you who backed him, really well done there. But one point that I'm looking at, Richarlison looked really good as well. And now I'm wondering, can Richarlison take minutes off Solanke? We're all sort of wondering, should we get Solanke in for the start of the season? Obviously the injury, a lot of people had him in their first drafts more than likely, but the injury put that to bed and we had to make the changes. But suddenly Richarlison looks up for the new season potentially, so it'd be interesting to see what they do going forward. Probably makes Solanke less of an option as well, but again, let's see what comes again away at Man City next. So that's a real test for the likes of Kudus, that defence. I know Van de Ven's popular, Pedro Porro's popular, so it's going to be a real test for them next week. So let's see going into that game. Sunderland 3, West Ham 0. Sunderland looking strong. I don't think many of us saw that coming. I think we thought they'd do all right. You know, the first game back in the Premier League at the Stadium Light, the crowd would be up for it, a lot of new signings, but they really were up for it, and West Ham weren't, and I think that's probably the biggest takeaway from this. The struggles for West Ham are going to be continuing from last season, it would seem, and us with Wan-Bissaka, Juve in defence, we've got them for defensive contributions a little bit their attacking threat as wing backs, but if they're not going to get those clean sheets and they're going to look that shaky, it's just not worth having them. They were a good price, but you know, I think it could be a bit of a tough season for them. And Chelsea, there's going to be their first home game of the season this weekend. Well, on Friday night, that's the early Premier League game, and that's going to be against Chelsea. And you know, I feel like that's the game where, like I talk about, João Pedro, Palmer may have a point to prove. And then finally, the real talking points is I'd like to finish on Villa and Newcastle. The 0-0 between them. It was a really poor game. Did watch most of that game. I think we can see what these sides can really do, certainly in game week 2. Both have got very different games in game week 2. You've got Aston Villa, who go away to Brentford. Now, Brentford is Watkins' former team, and obviously the way Brentford conceded the goals against Nottingham Forest, you think that probably Villa can go out there and put in a performance, and those of you like me who had the faith to put Rodgers and Watkins in their first teams, hopefully that will be repaid going into this weekend. That's my hope anyway. And then you've got Newcastle, who are at home to Liverpool on the Monday night, and that's going to be a very interesting game, obviously with the whole Isak situation. But I'd stay away from pretty much most Newcastle assets. Those of you who went with him, went with defenders, sorry, you have been repaid in that first game. It would have been brave to do it against Villa away, but you would have been repaid. But at the moment, I don't think any of us should be really looking at any Newcastle assets, not until they settle, get the transfer window out of the way, see what's happening with Isak, see how if they manage to get in that other striker, Johan Visser being that one. If Isak goes, Visser will be surely the main number 9 at Newcastle. So certainly before we jump on Newcastle, let's get some more information. And like I say, hope Villa can repay us, the ones that went for Watkins and Rodgers. So I hope you enjoyed the initial thoughts about game week 1. There's a lot to think about. Gained a lot of information, but a lot more to be gained this week. I think that's the main thing. I'll be back in the next couple of days with the transfer plans video, then moving on to the final team selection video. I know I've talked about not really wanting to make a transfer, so that probably spoils that one, but I will still make the transfers video because there'll be plenty of you out there that still want to make a transfer and maybe jumping off players like Marmoush, for example. So if you want to join the journey as well, please hit the subscribe button and make sure you don't miss those videos. But otherwise, I will see you in the next video.